I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening. So today we have Polly. How would you describe your place in the industry?
Well, I've been a sex worker for about 7 or 8 years now. I organise with Swarm. I also do some academic work around sex work, so I do little bits of
all the things. Yeah. And how long has it looked like this?
I started doing sex work when I was doing my PhD, so I've always been doing academia and sex work kind of alongside each other.
Mm-hmm. How many years is that now?
I think it's 8 in November, but I would have to check my time. Okay. A long time. And then I've been sort of doing more like activism and organising around sex work for about 6 or 7 years, but really sort of intensely since 2019, I'd say.
Okay. And so you started studying first before jumping in?
Yeah. So I did my undergrad. I came back to London. I did my master's degree. And then sort of floated around doing jobs that I didn't really like very much and not really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do a PhD, partly because I didn't know what else I wanted to do.
And was it all in the same subject matter?
It was all in sort of sociology.
Okay.
A slightly different subject matter, but yeah, all in kind of the same area. And then I started my PhD. I did 1 year of my PhD and quickly realised that even with funding, it was not enough to like live in London at all. And at that point, lots of my friends were sex workers, I think.
How did you meet them?
I think through kind of like non-monogamy and kink circles rather than anything else. But yeah, I think I just kind of fell into being friends with them, which was very nice. And then a good friend of mine as well, who I'd known for quite a long time, had just started working, and she was just like, you should just do it. And I mean, obviously I had a very kind of lucky introduction to it because I felt very supported. I felt very like I was able to ask questions. I didn't feel isolated. I didn't feel terrified beyond like the normal level of like, oh God, this is quite intimidating when I started.
Why do you think you didn't feel those things?
Just because I had so much support around me. Like I had 2 or 3 really close friends who I could ask questions and who were really, really happy to like provide both their knowledge, resources, material support, take pictures of me, help me start a website, help me do things like that, which I feel is quite rare and quite lucky.
And why do you think people might feel terrified into entering the industry?
I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one, because a lot of people obviously start when they are sort of, you know, it's a last resort for a lot of people. Like they often are in imminent financial crisis when they're starting. And so it might feel terrifying because it's the last thing they have tried before they get evicted or, you know, they have other economic consequences. So I feel it must be terrifying if you have that sort of imminent crisis and this is like, it has to work. That is quite terrifying, I guess. It's often presented as quite a dangerous job. You know, obviously for some people there are more risks, some people there are less risks. But I feel that when you are starting out, you assume it's just going to be dangerous. And so I feel that for lots of people that might be quite terrifying. The thing that I see the most when I'm talking to kind of newer people is that they just don't know any other sex workers. So they don't know like where to turn to for support. They don't know who to ask questions. They don't also know how to do all of the things that you or I might just take for granted for like knowing how to do like screening or things like that. Because there's no handbook on that. And it's just kind of community support that tells you how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I started off in a facility, like in a dungeon. And even though I had no clue and I was quite ignorant, I don't think I felt the fear, also because I was in a decriminalized space. And so it seemed all very like functioning. And there was an ad, there were like a proper phone number, there was a real address, there was OHS posters. Yeah, and so I guess I didn't feel that fear maybe as much. The stuff that I had to deal with was mostly around the stigma.
Of course, yeah.
I think. But when you were studying, doing your PhD, starting up the website for the escorting, like how I'm always interested to know how people navigate thinking about themselves as a brand. Did you encounter that?
I think yes. I think not lots right at the beginning, because I didn't make a website for about a couple of months. I think I just started off for battle work. And I don't think...
Who wrote the bio?
I wrote the bio.
Do you remember what it said? Keywords.
Not hugely different from what it is now. It's just been like refined over and over again.
Yeah.
But I do not think I am... I think I'm creative in some ways, but not in a branding way. Like, I don't think my brand is particularly like innovative or like interesting.
It's
pretty
great.
classic. Well, thanks. That's very kind.
How would you describe the brand, even though it's pretty classic?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty classic, right? Like, but I don't feel the need to reinvent the wheel with my branding, because I'm not trying to do something particularly exciting. I think, like, sometimes I try to because I get bored, but
I think it's still exciting to people, though. No.
Oh, exciting in one way, but I don't think it's like anything different or like unique beyond, like, you know, there's not many people with my particular like characteristics perhaps working in the area that I'm working in, I guess. But I think... Do
you mean the escorting area, or...?
Yeah, just like...
Kink adjacent.
Kink adjacent, but as in figure and hair colour and things like that. I think I wouldn't have started properly thinking about my branding until sort of 2 or 3 years in, when I got a bit more confident working, maybe like put my rates up a bit, felt a bit more like established. Because before that, I think I had just sort of been flailing around a bit.
Do you remember your first bookings versus how you kind of run things now?
Oh God, yeah.
Were there like nowadays? Do you have like a routine of sorts, or is it quite different?
So my first ever booking was actually a duo with a friend of mine, because her client wanted someone who wasn't an escort. And, you know, it was just this like young entrepreneur that he could corrupt, and obviously she just asked me. And it was hysterical because he wanted us to use a double-ended dildo together, but he'd asked her to buy it. And she bought one, but it was, I don't know, just extremely small.
Okay.
Like tiny.
Just to make the job easier.
Yeah, like it was about this long, like I guess like a foot or something.
Oh, it was very close. Oh, I thought you meant skinny.
Skinny, but also tiny. It was just small in all ways. And so we were desperately trying to use it. Neither of us had really ever like used that before, because I don't know. I don't like to use that. Like, for me personally, it's not. It was just completely a failure. Like, we couldn't play in both of us at the same time. It was not possible. So he obviously just pretended and like angled.
Did he look like he was having?
He had a lovely time. Yes, but
it was a good show.
It was terrifying. And I think now I would not do that, because I would know to take the measurement. Yeah, I think I almost maybe used to put, I don't know. I think I used to fret about like smaller things when I first started. So like, I'm trying to think of, whilst now I feel like I'm so much more confident, it doesn't really matter if like one tiny thing has gone wrong, or like my blow dry didn't come out how I wanted it to, or something like that, stuff like that, because I know that I have just the confidence to carry a session forward, whilst I feel when I first started, I was relying on like, this has to be right in order to get it done. Yeah.
And do you normally do GFE or girlfriend experience or like kink stuff, or is it quite mixed?
Quite a mix. I would say most of my clients want a sort of blend of both, right? So they want, like, it's very rare that I get clients who want exclusively kink with no sex.
Yeah.
I've had probably like 2 or 3,
Mhm.
but I feel, you know, if you're looking for that, you would see someone who specializes in that.
Dominatrix,
Yeah.
Do you have like purely GFE clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-mm. Okay.
But most of them want some aspect of kink.
Okay. I mean, I've only ever done purely escorting or purely dominatrix work, or like the brothel, the massage stuff. And so it's always been very, very distinct for me.
Sure.
Yeah. Like even when I did massage and some people would be like, I wanted to be kinky, it wouldn't really. So I guess I'm just curious, what does a session look like when it's a kinky GFE experience? Do people know what they're asking for?
Oh God, some of them do. I think some people want just to experience kink.
Yeah.
In like a sort of safe place.
Okay. They don't know yet what that is.
They don't know what it is. Usually because I am curvy, I think like a very tedious association between like, if you're tall and curvy, you're naturally dominant. And it's like, I find it a little boring.
Okay.
But a lot of people want that. So they want like a dominant girlfriend who's going to like take control. They don't really want anything like hardcore, but they just want someone who's going to run the session. Often they do know what they want, but sometimes, as my friend put it, they want the session to be all about them, but they want you to run it entirely. And you're sort of struggling to be like, what exactly do you want me to do?
They want it to be all about them, but they want you to run it. What do you mean they want it to be all about them?
Just like, they want you to guess completely what they want. They want you to be some kind of sort of intuitive person who can understand exactly what it is they want, because they want that GFE, because their girlfriend would know exactly what they want. But you're so it can be, I think, tricky.
Yeah. But do you speak a lot with them?
I try.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think sometimes clients are either shy or inexperienced about talking about things. And so, you know, I once asked someone, is there anything like, you don't want me? Sometimes they won't quite know what they want, but as long as they know what they don't want, I can, yeah. And he was like, no, I'm fine with everything. I was like, any part of your body you don't really like being touched? Like, no, everything's fine. And I started giving him a blowjob, and he was like, oh no, absolutely not. And I was like, it's quite a classic. So like, I would have been one to mention. And obviously with kink, I think it gets a bit more tricky, which is why often those sessions are quite, you know, I think usually people are looking for like quote unquote sensual domination, which for them just means like less intense, like a little bit of body worship, maybe some like blindfolding, and that's probably like the level of it. Yeah.
Okay, so like an attitude rather than an activity.
I think so. That's a good way of putting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were practicing or playing in kink personally prior?
Yeah.
That's how you met all the sex workers?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that gave me lots of confidence to just kind of start doing kink bookings.
Okay. So when you first started doing all the stuff on adult work, you didn't mention kink stuff?
No, I did. From the very start, I was doing kink bookings, yeah.
Okay. And how did you find the kink community? What made you... this is always an interesting one for me, because like I didn't know anything about kink or power dynamics or anything before I entered the industry.
That's fascinating.
I just went straight into the deep end. Like, I'll just join a dungeon and learn how to become a dominatrix. Not really sure what that is.
Sounds fun.
Oh, that's a flogger. What do you do with that? It worked out.
Yeah.
But how does one like think, I'm gonna find the party and go to it?
So I think I had like felt interested in power dynamics and in sex from, I guess, quite a young age. Mm-hmm. Maybe not realizing, but now looking back on it, the way I wanted to have sex, I can now be like, that was like fucked up, but in a way that you would find hot, but not so much back then because it was non-consensual. And then when I was at university, my boyfriend kind of very gently played around with stuff. And then when I moved back to London, I started dating someone who's still a very, very good friend of mine. And both of us, I think, kind of spoke about wanting to go to more parties or explore things like that a bit more. And I'm trying to think of like how we actually did it. I think we just went to one.
You just like heard about it in a
Yeah.
magazine, or
I think we've been to maybe some queer events.
oh, okay,
Where people had mentioned a few things.
okay,
And so we went to one at what I still think is the best, or was the best, kink venue in London, which is now sadly closed. It was this place called, what's it called? The Hoist.
okay.
It was a leather bar. Used to be exclusively a gay male leather bar, but sadly, they weren't making, well, sadly for them, they weren't making enough money. Luckily for
Us.
everyone who wasn't a gay man, because they let some like just regular queers in. And it was incredibly cool. It was in the Vauxhall Arches. It was really dark and grimy and like lots of little holes where you could fuck, and like I think it looked really cool, and it was for me somewhere I really enjoyed because I love that like grimy aesthetic. I want things to feel a bit like seedy, which I know it's not for everyone, but for me, I want it to feel.
I don't want to sit down there.
Yeah.
Push me on the ground.
So we went to a party there and we were terrified. I remember feeling just completely like out of my depth. We had a really nice time. People were really lovely and friendly. I think maybe we went to Kit Kat in Berlin after that, which was a good time as well. And then we met some friends who we're now still very good friends with, and I think sort of going to slightly more like on the scene kink parties. But this would have been back in like 2014, 13, 14, something like that. And then just kept going. And I think obviously I'm very lucky in that like all my friends really, except for maybe one, all my close friends are into some kind of like weird pervert sex in some way. So it's always been very easy for me to explore stuff like that. It's like a normal topic of conversation for us. We don't, I guess, feel need to censor ourselves too much.
Okay. And when you say that now you are doing like sex work academia sort of merged stuff, like is that something that came up prior to your work in sex work, or something that grew?
I think so. My PhD was nothing to do with sex work really. And if I had, I guess, like, I've slightly fallen into, I think, sex work research just because there were some jobs going, and I obviously have experience in sex work and experience in research. It was never kind of what I wanted to do as a researcher. I found it interesting, but I would prefer to have been able to get jobs researching what my PhD was in, but I didn't.
Okay.
And I think
do you still feel like that now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling very ambivalent about academia because it's a really terrible industry at the moment.
Why?
Super precarious. Everyone is constantly on strike, which is a good thing, but a bad thing because it means the conditions are bad. I've been trying, I did my PhD Fiverr in 2020 and have been since then trying to get a permanent academic contract. I have not managed to get one. It's very difficult to do so. And so all the contracts I have gotten are quite short term. The pay is very bad. I don't think they treat you very well. This is not a particularly enjoyable space, I think, to be in at the moment. And especially when you can see your earning potential in other industries sort of scrabbling around for these quite low paid short-term contracts doesn't feel very fulfilling, I think.
Unless the subject matter is fulfilling enough.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been really lucky that the people I've worked with in the last couple of years, I've really enjoyed all the projects and all the people I've worked with. I haven't enjoyed the kind of experience of being in academia as a broader thing.
Okay. And so, looking.
Yeah. Thank God. I forgot to say that. But I do feel very lucky, I think, lots of people, when they finish their PhDs, they literally have to just take whatever comes at them, because PhDs are expensive, and you have to just start working. And I was able to not do that because I had looking to fall back on.
Yeah, and you also do a lot of stuff with Swarm.
Yes.
And what is Swarm, for those who don't know?
Swarm is a grassroots sex worker support and that sort of advocacy group. It stands for Sex Workers Advocacy and Resistance Movement.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I always used to get it wrong. Right now. So it started in 2009. It used to be called SWU, Sex Workers Open University. But I think it was 2016 when it was changed, because people kept mistaking SWU for a university.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I was about to ask, what courses did you do?
Very advanced. So yeah, I think I'd gone to maybe 1 or 2 Swarm meetings before I started sex work, but I became more involved in Swarm when I started sex working. And again, several of my friends have been very much involved in Swarm, and I've sort of been caught up in what they're doing often, and just helping out with what they're doing. And then in the last few years, have done a lot more with Swarm, I would say.
And I guess as somebody tangential, dipping in a little bit, I think for me, Swarm feels like a way for community to be aware of itself and for us to gather. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the landscape of sex work in the UK has changed so much in the 15 years since Swarm or SWU started, because back then there just were not very many other sex worker groups. There was ECP, the English Collective of Prostitutes, who have been going for a lot longer and who do really incredible work, but it was kind of ECP or SWU. Whilst now...
What were the differences between those?
I think ECP have had a lot more of a focus on, I think, street-based sex workers, migrant sex workers, and especially women and mothers who sex work has always been a really strong focus of them. I don't know if there's a huge difference. I think it was just sort of different people organising in slightly different ways.
Okay. So they also do mostly community building?
Yeah, absolutely. They do a lot of policy as well, though.
Okay.
They've done some really great papers, especially around sex working mothers, and they have a they work out of a place in Kentish Town called the Town Women's Centre or something like that, which is this old incredible building that I think someone bought back in the 70s or something, which allowed them, various other groups, Women Against Rape,
some stability.
Yeah, some stability. So I think a lot of their work has been grounded in that particular, very material way. Yeah.
Okay. All right, fair. Whereas Swarm sometimes has a space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, until very recently, not even... Obviously now we do have a bit more of a base in East London, but that's such a recent thing, and it's been really nice. Previously, it had been very hard to even book a meeting room, which seems silly, but yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's what is convenient for people, what can we afford, and,
exactly, yeah.
And who's open to having us, unfortunately. And who are the other groups that have come up in that time?
So I think one of the biggest and kind of most influential, obviously, is the Sex Workers Union, which used to be called United Sex Workers, and then last year changed their name and their affiliation, parent union affiliation. And that's obviously been a really big deal because they have been able to do a lot more of the not casework in as such, but sort of labour rights organising, I think. Because Swarm used to do that, but I feel that it's good to separate out different strands of work that we're doing. Also, Decrim Now, I cannot remember when Decrim Now started, 2018 maybe? But don't quote me, don't quote me on that, but don't really quote me on that. And that group does a lot more policy and campaigning work. which I feel means that Swarm have sort of naturally fallen into like more community support, more in-person meetups, kind of trying to lessen isolation and build that sort of big base that people can work from.
And would you say that it's mostly sex workers who are in all of these orgs?
Yeah. I mean, in theory, Swarm is open to sex workers and allies. And we do have a few people who aren't sex workers. Although sometimes I don't even realise that they're not sex.
Okay.
I organised an event with someone recently, and at the event found out that they had never done sex work, and they're just like a really devoted ally. And I was like, oh, I just kind of assumed. Which was quite cute and fun.
What gave it away? An inside joke that didn't work?
I can't even remember. I think it's just like, clients, and they had to be like, no, I don't know. It was sweet.
Yeah. And I mean, on all the other industries that I've been in, I would say that sex work, there's a particular concentration of academics and activists. Is there some sort of correlation?
I mean, I think, kind of going back to what a terrible industry academia is, I think that you can't afford to especially do something like a master's or a PhD. Often they're so time and labour intensive that it's very, very difficult to work alongside it unless you're doing something that pays you a higher amount per hour than like working in a bar. Obviously, I know some people who do work in a bar and do a master's or a PhD, and they're just exhausted constantly, like so hardworking. And I think so for a lot of people, sex work feels like a way to slightly avoid that. And I think, I think that's really bad. Like, I don't think people should have to become sex workers if they want to pursue higher education, because it's not something that is open to everyone. And like, not everyone wants to do that. I think it's great that that's possible, but I think it's a real failing of academia that it's in such a disastrous shape.
And then it's like a double failing, because if the word gets back, you can often be excluded.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean,
rather than them understanding the state of affairs.
I think I'm quite lucky in that I can be a bit more open about my academic work and my sex work, because the last two projects I've worked on, one of the reasons they hired me was because I had knowledge of the sex industry, and so I could be really open, which was really very nice actually. Like, I've never, I think, been able to do that quite as much, and it felt really lovely. But yeah, for lots of people, you would get fired, or they would, even if you wouldn't 100% get fired, I feel the fear of being fired would be too high to come out.
And when it comes to where you're at right now, do you think you still kind of prefer to find an academic position?
I think at this point, no.
What is like an ideal scenario for you then? Like this much that?
In a really ideal world, I would work a 2-day-a-week research job that was something I was really passionate about, that I found interesting, that paid reasonably well, that was in a topic that, maybe it wasn't something I already organise around, but like adjacent to perhaps. Because I really enjoy research. I love the sort of process. I love the kind of analytical nature of it. I like writing. I like doing that. I like doing interviews. I love sort of talking to people. But I think within academia, for me, no longer feels worth it. And yeah, I think working 2 days a week is kind of my ideal. And then I could still do sex work, which I'm still enjoying enough to want to keep going with, and still keep up my commitments with Swarm and with various other groups I organise with, and feel like I had a bit of time to myself still.
And when it comes to like bookings, for example, you say that you're still enjoying it. How do you sort of manage that? Like for me, when I first started, I would do like 8 bookings a day sometimes.
Wow.
When you're at the houses, people are just coming in and out. And it was tiring, but it was life, and it was fine, and I was younger. Although, to be fair, I probably could still do that. Part of me was like, if there were actual brothels here, I'd probably do a shift every now and then. But now I kind of feel like maybe like 2 sessions a week makes it still like a treat, you know? And I have all this other shit to do now also. I mean, way to start a podcast, etc. But I think maybe maximum 3, and then it still feels like it's a treat for everybody.
Yeah.
But what's your kind of scenario? Do you have a relationship with understanding that?
I think very, very similar. There's definitely been times when I've worked a lot more.
Yeah.
And there have been times where I've worked a lot less. But yeah, like 2 or 3 a week feels nice and manageable. Like I would say a maximum of like 2 bookings a day if they're shorter, or like one slightly longer one. I feel that feels nice. Like sometimes it's nice to just kind of get them all done. But in general, I think more than 2 or 3 a week, and I start to become a bit like, oh gosh, must I put on my face once more? And I hate feeling like that, because I enjoy both getting ready for work, but I also enjoy it because I like to make myself look nice. And so when the kind of preparation and the like kind of like cranking your personality up a little bit starts to feel like a chore, I feel that you're not going to be very good at your job, or I personally am not going to be as good as my job. And then also it just is so tiring. And sometimes some bookings are so, easy and the conversation flows and this, and then other times when people are shyer and you're really having to like make just a huge amount of conversational effort, which I understand why, but it just is exhausting.
Yeah, when I don't get reaction.
Yeah.
Sometimes time can go so slowly. I mean, I don't need people to even say much because there's so much activity in dom work, right? But it's like, if they just don't give you that, like a sigh or that like the body collapsing on itself or some sort of reaction, it's just like, because they're shy or terrified, and not in a way that's like expressed enough. Just like, okay, all right. Yeah, but sometimes when I do a tour, I'll still do 4 in a day because you got to make costs like count.
Absolutely.
Also, you're flying, you're getting the spot. You just have to do it sometimes, I guess. But yeah, in an ideal world.
Yeah, I mean that would be nice. Like 2 days of kind of desk work, 1 or 2 days of sex work, and then the rest of my time just sort of spent doing whatever I feel like in that moment.
What do you like to do in those moments?
Swim. I love swimming.
Where do you swim in London?
The Manor House West Reservoir. Oh. It's like I like swimming outdoors. I do not enjoy inside swimming too much.
Chlorine.
All I can get. But yeah, outside like cold water swimming is my favourite thing to do.
When did you figure that out?
I've always loved swimming. Like my mum taught me to swim when I was quite young, and I'm very much like, if I see a body of water and it doesn't look really dangerous, I will try and get it. Which is funny because I'm not really like an outdoorsy type person. I don't like camping. I don't like discomfort.
What about sand?
I can deal with sand if there's like a sea attached. But I will get in really, really cold water of the type that many people might not ever choose to.
What about ice baths?
I enjoy them, but I like...
That's not the point.
No, I like being in it for a long time. Like I enjoy the cold, but I would prefer the temperature I could stay in for like at least 10 minutes.
Okay.
My lowest for a kind of extended swim is, I think, 9.9.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which isn't an ice bath.
I think it's close though, no?
That was really tough.
Where was that? Or just time of year?
Yeah, it was just like November.
Are you like alone at doing this? Are there people who are also into it?
Some people go the whole year round. Like I follow them on Instagram, and in the winter months, you see them breaking up the ice on the reservoir before people get in.
What are they wearing?
Some people just go in a swimsuit.
Wow.
Some people go in wetsuits, and
there are clubs, right? I've heard of one in Hampstead.
Yeah, the Hampstead Ponds is really nice as well.
Yeah.
I got a bit of a chip on my shoulder about the Hampstead Ponds because I grew up quite near there.
Yeah.
So I used to go there quite a lot. And the ladies' pond especially is this like gorgeous space. There's a meadow you can sunbathe. And there used to be like an entrance fee, but it was sort of voluntary.
Okay.
And then over lockdown, they took advantage of, I feel, distancing rules, and they made it so that you have to like book a slot to swim there. Which is fine. They do that at the reservoir, but it's you have to book a slot, and they'll kick you out of like the sunbathing meadow at the end of your slot, which just feels wrong to me. And I just got really grumpy about it. I was like, that's not what the House of Ponds is about. It was one of these very few spaces in London which did feel very safe because there were no men allowed. There have been controversies about whether trans women are allowed there or not, and in general, my trans friends have said they feel quite comfortable unless the TERFs on that particular moment have decided to make a sort of fuss. But in general, I think it felt like this beautiful space. It was sort of like the only lesbian cruising space in London, and now they've ruined it. And so even though you have to book a slot at the West Reservoir as well, I feel more comfortable doing that because I feel I haven't lost anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Got strong
Your history.
Exactly.
Your history was tainted.
Yeah. And I don't do that at men's ponds.
Where do lesbians cruise these days?
God.
I mean, I've had an account on Grindr, but it doesn't really work that way.
I've never tried. Where do lesbians cruise?
You know, I would really love you know how gay men have cruising bars and saunas. It's just like, when is the queer community going to like have a spot like this, or multiple, please?
I mean, we tried, I feel, to flag slightly over to the opening of the or the pop-up of the lesbian tapas bar on Broadway Market. They did like a one-night residency, which just was absolutely bonkers.
Oh, I remember seeing it on the video. It went out to the street. It was.
I went there really early because I wanted to sit down, and we went in and we got like the last seat, and we stayed there for a couple of hours, and then we left to get some air. And the entirety of Broadway Market was just full, which was sort of coming out and being like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah.
I think a few of us tried to flag at that event, but no one cruised. I strongly feel there should be a lesbian cruising bar. I think I don't know, I feel often like it might not work as well as for gay men, but...
Maybe a queer spot, though.
Yeah. There used to be...
I know a few. People who would be just fine.
There used to be like lesbian or like queer, but focused, I think, around like queer women and non-binary people. A sauna. It was in Stockholm. This was a long time ago, pre-lockdown.
Yeah.
It's called Sweat.
Okay.
And it was fun, but it
didn't quite have the grime.
It didn't have the grime.
You need to be a bit dirtier.
I think it was a good time, but it wasn't quite what I wanted.
What would you have designed?
I'm not sure. I think a bit darker. It was a bit brightly lit.
Yeah.
And I think it just needs to be a little seedier.
Okay.
And I think often people struggle, very rightly so, to find the balance between trying to make somewhere like feel really safe for people, but also feel like edgy and a bit seedy and like risky, but in a way which isn't actually
my
risky.
place here.
Okay then. I stare directly at him like Mars. And it's so hard, right? Because you want those spaces to feel safe for people to express themselves, but then you have people like me being like, no, I want it to feel edgier and like a bit less soft and a bit harder. But that's really hard to do without making it less risky. I don't know.
I think so. I think it's a design decision.
Yeah, totally.
Because you can have safeguarding practices and door policies and throwing people out, and all these things, and that can look like a literal shithole.
Yeah.
I think you don't need it to look
worse.
I guess maybe some lighting things.
Lighting.
Yeah.
I feel having places be less open, more little nooks and crannies.
And I guess there has to be like that if you're going to go into this one very dark area, then this is on you.
Yeah, and I think that that sometimes people are worried to sort of say that in events.
Oh.
And I think, like, to a certain extent, whilst it's really, really admirable to try and make these spaces completely, you know, I think sometimes you do have to let people be responsible for themselves a little bit and make them aware of the risks.
I mean, they're always responsible for themselves.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But, yeah, it's weird how people try to forget that.
Right.
Or forget that, or don't take it into consideration.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people try and, like, it sounds weird perhaps, but kind of plan their way out of anything going wrong. And you can't do that. You can have as many policies and, like, you can test people on the rules and you can do X, Y, and Z. And at the end of the day, there is still the potential for risk and there is still the potential for harm. And I think sometimes people are so determined to kind of get it all, like, right and correct that, like, some of the fun gets stripped out of it a little bit.
I guess that's why private things between friends and stuff can be really...
Because there's more trust as well,
Yeah, raucous.
Yeah.
Not to mention, we happen to be going on one together next week.
I'm so excited.
I know, I have no idea what to expect.
Me either.
Have we been sworn to secrecy, or can we talk about it to people?
I don't know.
I mean, we don't have to say where it's going to be or who exactly is going to be. We can say that it's 30? 30 people?
I think it's about 30 people, yeah.
30 people who are pretty filthy. And now we know one is definitely filthy.
Yeah, literally grimy.
Yeah. I'll stay out of
I
your
will
room.
be after swimming in the pond.
In a house in the countryside, and it's very organized. There's themes. I'm like, I don't want to have to buy more stuff, so I'm going to probably just be in, like, my normal weird PVC kink gear. It's like one of them's like flapper. I'm like, flapper? Whatever. Latex gown.
Have you had your character?
Yeah. I have my character. Don't. I was about, who's your character? No. Do you identify with your character for the murder mystery night?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I'm going to be okay with mine too.
Yeah. I have bought a new dress, but secondhand.
Murder mystery with filthy people who know. Like, who writes? Is there like a premise that's given to us on a night? I've never actually played it before.
I've only ever done it once, and I was 14, so I imagine it might be a little bit.
It's going to be a bit different.
Slightly. And I don't think I took that one particularly seriously. So I think basically what happens is one person is sort of the detective, and so someone gets murdered at the start who's not in part of the game.
Who's not actually ever been alive. Okay, yeah.
And then you go around, like, asking each other questions to try and figure out who did it, and then you have to, at the end of the game,
I'm going to do pretty well at this then.
I think I'm going to be terrible because I often get quite tired of these things quite quickly because I'm like, I just want to sit down and, like, have a drink. And I'm not very competitive. One of my friends who's coming.
I love solutions.
Incredibly competitive.
Oh, okay. They can win then.
Yeah.
We can just go have a drink.
I'll enjoy it for like 20 minutes and I'll be like, oh my goodness, no.
It goes for long?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to go to the church. I know that we've been forbidden on Sunday, but there's a church on site.
Yeah.
And I feel like with that many people, it would be an incredible service. Or disservice.
I'm going to insist on taking some pictures.
Yeah, so maybe I'll do a solo episode where I go into, if I come out, how it went. But yeah, I think a campaign for a queer cruising play venue would be amazing. And considering how so many venues are getting shut down, I wonder, I mean, it would be incredibly profitable, but if it could stay alive.
My worry is that people just aren't going to be very good at cruising. Because I think, like, lots...
They'd just be partying?
I think...
Maybe it needs to be very small then.
It needs to be small, and people need to be reminded about, like, how to cruise. Mm-hmm. And I think...
How do you cruise?
Personally, I would understand it as a lot less, like, verbal. I think a lot of it is about, like, non-verbal consent. It's about, like, body language. And I feel that the recent, like, sort of push towards this, like, hyper verbal consent, which I don't actually think is always particularly good, and I think sometimes can be quite, like, oppressive. I feel sometimes if you are being, like, asked questions directly, I, for one, often feel a bit like
it can be very
it's too much sometimes. And I think, like, again, this is trying to be like, if we sort of legislate our way out of risk, we can't possibly nothing go wrong. And so I think, like, critique for me feels a bit more about understanding that you can consent to things or not consent to things in a way which is a bit less obvious. And I think that my generation feels a bit more worried about that. I think because of the way in which the discourse around various things are shaken down. And that's not sort of laying blame at anyone's feet or anything like that. I think it's just kind of unfortunate the way in which society has started to talk about some things. But I think if we brought back a real enthusiasm for handkerchief codes, that would be my vote. And then ease people back into like, I think sometimes people are just really scared to hit on people because they've been told sometimes that that's too aggressive. And I think especially like queer women are quite worried about hitting on people because they're worried about coming across as like predators or too much.
Yeah.
And whilst that's a really understandable fear, I want to be like, you can't cruise unless you're going to be happy to hit on someone.
But perhaps if there's a designated space and it's understood that this is the premise.
Exactly.
Which I think is why those spaces are successful.
Yeah, because you know if you're going to go in there, it's likely that you're going to be hit on.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
You're there for
and I think
reason.
That's why they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
But I just worry that, especially in England where everyone is just often like terrible at being direct anyway, people would fall back on just kind of like, no one flirting with each other, no one hitting on each other. I don't know, maybe I'm too pessimistic.
Maybe that's where plants are necessary.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that maybe you'd like to share before? Anything that maybe our conversation brought up apart from the fact that we need to start a petition to start a queer thing spot?
More handkerchief codes.
Yeah.
I think you should teach mandatory handkerchief codes in first year of university. I was about to go to school and I was like, no, that's wrong. First year uni, mandatory.
That's what the course would have been at the Sex Workers Open University.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll do one on our little holiday.
Okay, yeah, totally. It's going to be like a pop-up workshop. So we'll end a little bit on an idea that I had that I'm stealing from a kink family gathering that I went to outside of New York. But I was talking to this new date of mine and talking about my work at the UN and waterboarding and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember I got waterboarded once. And it was an activity. It was called Root Beer Float Waterboarding. And we're all meeting. We're all so excited to be there at 3 p.m. schedule, lesbians.
Yeah.
And everybody's excited. Nobody actually wants to be the one waterboarded. So of course, me, always hand up.
Yeah.
I end up being the one lying on the ground in the grass. One leg on my arm, another one on my forehead. Somebody feeds me. What ice cream do you want? Vegan or not?
That's the greatest thing ever.
Not vegan. Vanilla, not vegan ice cream. Somebody puts a beautiful a cheesecloth on my face. And says, "You ready?" And they've left 2 fingers free to do that if I need to. And root beer.
I don't think I even know what root beer is.
It's like
a soda.
It's like a Coke.
God, I've been waterboarded, but I don't know if I could be waterboarded with root beer. That's intense.
It was like,
ice cream.
It was amazing, and all of the attention was amazing. But I went like that, apparently I've meditated for a really fucking long time. So there I am going to my meditation headspace. This is fine. You're not drowning. It's an experience. Don't judge. Ice cream. And then I'm like, yeah, that's probably enough time. Tap. And they were like, wow, that didn't last long. Apparently it was seconds.
They lied to you, I'm sure.
Pathetic. Anyway, so then that could be my pop-up activity.
I would take that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not root beer.
I'll buy the 2 types of ice cream. Maybe also no, lactose intolerance will be fine with the dairy free.
Yeah, strawberry. Mango strawberry.
But thank you so much
You're so
for joining
welcome.
me.
Thank you.
It's lovely to chat.
Yeah, it's
and
really nice.
maybe there'll be a next time.
I hope so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening. There will be a next time. Bye.